Hey peeps, we are live. Woohoo! What's up on this Fine Money? This is a bonus session. We don't typically do these on this day, but we decided to have this session because we have a spectacular guest that I cannot wait to introduce you to. So if you're new to the group, or we're going to be sharing this on YouTube. If you're new to YouTube, I'm Carolyn J. Carpenter, and we are Hollywood Gatekeepers, and I train people how to become expert readers in the film industry. So we take a screenplay, we do kind of like a book report known as coverage, and then we give that coverage to producers, directors, writers. Let me turn off that beeping, sorry. Producers, directors, writers, and we let them know whether or not the screenplay should move forward in the process. So producers rely on us to be able to break down a screenplay and tell a good story. And writers, we also do this for writers so that they can get feedback on their screenplay, so that we can tell them, you know, what works and doesn't work in their screenplay, and so that we can support that writer. Really important. We want to be a support system for producers, and we want to be a champion for those writers. Buenos dias, bonjour. Coming from everywhere. I'm bonjour today, but tomorrow I'll be back to Buenos Dias because I'll be back in Southern California. Today is my last day in Montreal, so super excited to go back home to Hollywood, the States, and all that. So if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe because we do a lot of great interviews like this, and click on the bell so you'll get notified. But today I'm going to introduce just a lovely, lovely, sweetest, hilarious, smart, really wonderful man that I just recently met. We actually met on Clubhouse. And so I want to just throw that out there because Clubhouse is a really great platform to meet for, especially for writers. There's a lot of, I've met some producers in there, and then you connect on Instagram. And so he is all about storytelling. So this is really cool. And we immediately were like, we're very different in what we do. He teaches teachers about storytelling. So it's so really interesting stuff, and not surprisingly, he's one of the best storytellers I've ever seen. Like the way that he tells stories is so great. You're gonna love this. So we just started talking like we should do something together. So here we are making it happen. Power of showing up, right? So, and then yesterday, I got to share this little show and tell. Serendipity, crack myself up. I went to a store here that I love, and I spent too much money, but they were really excited that I did. So they gave me this pillow. This is the cutest thing. I'm dying. So this is like perfect for today, right? Universe stepping in. So that was my show and tell moment, just like a child. What can I bring to show and tell? So without further ado, I'm going to stop rambling, and I'm going to bring on a guest that I'm super excited. So I want to welcome everybody, give it a lot of love. Bienvenue à Montreal to our lovely Jamie Keddie. So welcome all the way from Barcelona, yes?
Yes, this is me in Barcelona, my Barcelona flat. Lovely to be with you all today. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for inviting me. Very nice of you.
Super happy to have you here. And I have to say that we love the accent. That's going to be helpful as well. It helps the storytelling for us people that have either Canadian. We have mostly Canadians and Americans, but so we're getting all kinds of olas today because you're in Barcelona. So it works like that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Buenos dias de Barcelona.
Yeah. So now you can speak Spanish with the Scottish accent. We're just getting so international. And then I can do Valley Girl in a Canadian. It's totally, that's about all I can do though. So it's just, I'm so thrilled to have you. And I want to just tell us in your own words, Jamie, what do you do? Tell us what you do.
Well, my background is education, specifically language teaching. And I'm a teacher trainer. I have taught English for years, but these days, most of what I do is teacher training. And in a nutshell, I train teachers to teach through story and storytelling. That's it in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, there it is. So I love this because I feel like we don't, and you and I have talked about this personally too, about we don't really, we don't double down on storytelling, even though it's who we are as a species. We used to paint on caves and like kids paint on chalk on the sidewalk. We can't help ourselves to tell a story. It's how we pass our, we will always be storytellers, which is why I feel like the readers are so important, because there will always be storytelling. Even when people say the industry is changing, blah, blah, and there's always noise about how it's never going to last. It's just so important. I love that you're doing this. It's super inspiring.
It's not going anywhere. That's the only thing we can be sure of.
We just the one constant in this world. And we write stories on, I say this all the time in our group, we write stories all day long, every day. It's like, and worry is imagination gone awry. Worry is just some story you're telling us. You're telling a story about each other right now, and the people watching, and they're all telling a story about what they're watching here. And like, we just do it naturally all day. So to be able to channel that into something that's useful and inspiring is, like, to me, the greatest thing.
Yeah. Being able to channel it into something useful and inspiring. I think that often, with my experience, is you don't often recognize the usefulness or the potential of a story when you first have a seed, some kind of story seed. You don't see that. It has to be something that you gradually develop and become aware of what the value of it is. Yeah. Do you collect your stories, Carolyn? You probably do, right?
I journal a lot, and I write my dreams down too, because those are always interesting. So it's like, yeah, I do. And I love listening. I'm a terrible eavesdropper, even though it's like, I just love eavesdropping. It's one of the best ways for you writers, screenplay writers, to get dialogue, because there's nothing that and watching the comments on some public thing like a news channel or something, and then looking at public comments, because you'll get just spectacular dialogue that way. And like, I had someone sitting behind me that said dating him is like waiting for water to boil. I was like, oh my God, it's the greatest line ever. And so I try not to do that, because it's kind of rude. But as a storyteller, it's really hard not to do that. Some of the best dialogue happens just in our life around us.
Yeah. It's funny that you mention collecting your dreams, because this is a question I ask when I give workshops and courses. I always want to know who collects their stories and who collects their dreams. And based on my own totally anecdotal evidence, but I've been doing this for quite a long time, I'm quite confident in saying that more people collect their dreams than they do their stories. And I find that quite interesting. I think maybe stories, I can't collect my dreams because I never remember them. So I'm kind of disadvantaged in that respect. But I've also found people less, when I want to tell people my dreams, they seem to be less interested in. So you got a choice. You can either pretend it's not a dream, or if you really want to get people to listen to your dreams, what you have to say to them, you say, God, I had this crazy dream last night and you were in it.
Yes. And
then they're invested. Then they'll say, oh yeah.
Their ears perk right up. Yeah.
So then tell them your dream. They'll sit through the whole thing waiting for that moment when they appear, and then you finish. So that was the end of my dream. And they say, well, where would I come into it? So I just you weren't really into it. I just wanted to get you to listen. And there's a lot in that, I think.
So and you can only do it once, though, unfortunately.
You can actually. Yeah.
So I asked Jamie to tell us, like, what makes a good story and what makes a bad story. And we were kind of like talking about this ahead of time, because I get this all the time. What makes a good screenplay? Tell me what you think about that. And then I'm going to chime in, because I talked too much already.
What makes a good story specifically?
Yeah.
Very difficult question to answer that one. It's because it comes down to so many things. It becomes down to your tastes, subjectivity. One very good friend of mine, who's a PR agent, says that at the end of the day, everyone just wants a happy ending. And I'm not so sure about that myself, because what's your favorite story ever? And what is it you like about it? What makes it so good? And maybe more importantly, who's telling of the story is it you like? Because a story isn't a story until somebody decides it's a story and tells it. So, the same story, in the sense, maybe a biography, could be told by more than one people. You might love one of the biographies and hate the other. So it's a very, very difficult question to answer. But I think that what I work with most of all, when I'm working with teachers, with my clients, is working on short personal experiences and anecdotes. And one thing that interests me a lot is looking for ways to turn the unremarkable into something very meaningful. And I think so. I'm really what really makes me attracted to what makes me kind of motivated, inspired is when I see this being done well. People finding or working with their little unremarkable everyday experiences, but finding the meaning of them and being able to communicate that and make connections, perhaps. Yes.
Yeah, I have a coach. So I'm a life coach, a certified life coach. And I did that because I was teaching people how to read screenplays, and then they would get stuck. And I was like, oh, well, I wanted to have tools and what, help people get unstuck. So I went and got certified as a life coach. And I have this amazing woman who's a coach of mine, and she's one of the best. She uses language better than anyone I've ever met. Like, she's amazing with language. And she does that all. She would have us do brags at the beginning of every session. And she was like, the smaller the brag, the better. So she'd have you look for those mundane little things and celebrate them. And that was such an interesting thing. And some of them were so hilarious. Like, I brushed my teeth today. Like, people were like, because they were feeling low in their life. And so by bragging about something that is mundane or whatever, but realizing the absolute beauty of it, it's so inspiring. I saw on the subway yesterday, or a couple days ago, I saw a woman who was blind with a cane come down the stairs right after, mind you, I had gotten a little bit lost and got on the wrong platform, and I worked it out. But then I watched her like maneuver, and I was like, look at her. She's like, she looked beautiful, and she was maneuvering, like clearly could not see like at all, and was maneuvering with cane. And I was like, how does she even know? Like, it was so spectacular to me, the feat that it would take just for that. And then I thought, and here, I was sort of nervous because it was like the edge of the platform, and I was kind of momming her in my head, like, oh, it'll be okay. But it was really interesting because just watching her kind of suss that out. And then the minute the minute the train arrived, she started feeling forward, and immediately, like, someone took her elbow and helped her on, someone got off, and it was all just so smooth and without a big deal, sort of mundane. But that thing went away, and I was choked up because it was such a beautiful, exactly what you're talking about, a beautiful experience of like something that was seemingly small but huge when you think about the details of it, and just made me so grateful for this people in the world, and her courage, and her, whatever was normal for her was so spectacular to me. So I love seeing those kind of stories everywhere.
I'm going to steal this idea of the mini brags.
Okay, it's all
I like it.
Really good, right? It's really good. And she often says, she's always trying to get us, and I do this with our screen readers as well, is to not optimize for happiness, but optimize for an evenness, so that no matter what comes to you, you're either, anything good that happens is gravy, and anything bad that happens is a lesson to move forward. So you're not trying to be happy, because when you do that, you put all kinds of scoops of judgment and shame and blame and all that on top of that. So she's really spectacular. So
yeah,
I've learned a lot from her for sure. So we're really, really loving having you here. And then, so tell us, like, what makes a bad story? Like, what pops out of your, or what's a bad storyteller too? It's a great, because you're such a good storyteller.
Well, we can all be bad storytellers. We're all susceptible to that. I think one of the interesting things about storytelling in my mind is that in my world, in any case, I'm going to assume this is probably not the case in the world of screenplay writing or screenplay reading, but in my world, we were never taught how to tell a story. No one ever said, this is what you should do. This is, and there's this tendency also for us to think that storytelling, when I say this, I'm talking about the mouth to ear way, the good old fashioned mouth to ear style storytelling. There's a tendency to see it as a performance. You'll say to people, what makes a good storyteller? I'm aware that you asked me what makes a good story, Carolyn, but people say, what makes a good storyteller? And they'll say things like charisma, eye contact, the ability to become the characters and all these things. But I think, no, I think that's focusing on the performance, and it's much more important to focus on what falls before that, which is preparation and development and the thinking and the thought and the structuring and the rethinking and the working and the reworking. And then once you have told it to an audience, to observe how the audience has reacted, and maybe questions they've had, what they've liked about it, what they've not liked, and go back to the story and rework it and rethink it. And so what makes a bad story? I would say maybe what makes an underdeveloped story is one that's just been people write, people prepare, and they think that's it. You've got to revisit, rework, and rethink your stories. And there's in my course, for example, there's a teacher who's just shared a fascinating story, and she's from Canada, and so she told this story of it was actually quite. It had me on the edge of my seat as I was listening to her tell this story. She was teaching her class, her students, and you know this thing if you're a teacher that you sometimes you lose your students' attention. Something might be happening outside the classroom, and they're kind of looking outside the window like this, which is exactly what was happening. It was a very cold day, winter's day. There was snow and ice everywhere, and so the teacher thought, "What are they looking at?" And she looked out the window to see that there was 3 or 4 cop cars, all with their blue lights flashing. And she got a little bit worried about this, and she got on to this. I think she maybe left the room to find out what was happening. She couldn't find out. She came back, and then they heard what sounded like a gunshot. And she panicked, but she kept cool. She asked her students to get under the desks. And they all did, and you'd expect students to be under the desk, maybe to be shaking with fear, but not these ones. They're all on their mobile phones, of course, you know, under their... And thanks to them being on their mobile phones and be able to communicate with other students in the school, it found out this was a big false alarm. That thing that they thought was a gunfire was a big piece of ice that had been removed from the roof, falling and crashing to the pavement below and causing a sound which sounded like a gunfire. So there's 3 or 4 guys removing ice. It was all a big false alarm. And she was very relieved, but she did go through a sort of simulation of what she thought could have been every teacher's greatest fear. And it was for me, this was when she told the story the first time, the reason I'm telling this story is because when she told the story the first time, we reworked it. And for example, she made no reference at all to the fact that it was winter. You know, you'll notice when I told the story, yes, I mentioned that information at the very start. And there's a very good, you know why that is. But a story is all about making connections, you know, connections and joining dots. And so information we've had that has been foreshadowed at the start of the story suddenly comes, and because she'd made no reference or mention of the fact that this story took place in a cold winter's day with ice and snow, when she mentioned that someone had been on the roof clearing the ice, it was like, oh, I had to compute that. Yeah. And maybe in the common community of speaking, this happened yesterday in Canada, where we all have this as background information. We don't need it to be restated. We know that we've got ice and snow during this week. That doesn't have to be mentioned. But these are the important little details. Storytelling, or good storytelling, is all about attention to detail. And a huge part of that is thinking about your listener and making things easy and being kind on your listener and making it an experience that is seamless in a sense. And then once you can do that, then breaking the rules. You know, I think that story's got value. I mean, yeah. One thing I would say, this is a slightly different topic, but I think it's relevant to everybody who's listening, especially if you are maybe going to be screenwriters, is to collect your stories like that one. I use an app that you maybe know called Google Keep.
Oh, wow. That's
so cool. Every time I get an idea for a story, I just put it into here. And you could imagine, and even if it's somebody else's story, I could imagine that story that I just described being a scene in a film quite easily, you know. Sure. And so steal stories, or borrow them if you like, borrow stories from others and collect them. And I've got about probably 400 stories in that app. And when they get more developed, I move them to a writing app called Bear that maybe some of you will know. So I've got a very sort of systemic way of doing it, which I really enjoy. And so it's one of my greatest possessions.
Google Keep, is that what it is?
Yeah, I'll show you again. Google Keep.
That's
Um,
awesome. And that's a great way to develop a screenplay for sure.
absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome.
There.
Yeah, yeah. Gotcha.
I mean, you know, this is really, really important. I think collecting your stories. If you're a screenplay writer, if you're a teacher, if you're a comedian, if you're a parent, if you're a business person, if you're a marketer, collecting your stories, because it doesn't sound very romantic to say this, but stories are actually tools. They can have purposes.
Yes.
They can be instructional.
Yeah.
We can use them. I mean, people use stories as a way of an excuse to go to war. People use story as a way to persuade vulnerable people to do absolutely awful, terrible things. And that's the dark side of story. But we've got to understand the potential and see stories as being, you know, they actually do have functions, or they can have functions, and to be aware of what those functions are. And you know, a story can be to show you. And I love, for example, do you know the story of Pai Mei?
No.
There's a restaurant opened up in Barcelona, just around the corner from me, called Pai Mei's. And I love that because Pai Mei is one of my favorite dudes. You know?
Your favorite what?
One of my favorite dudes.
Oh,
so you might know this. Can I tell you the story in just 2 minutes?
Please do. Tell me a story, Jamie.
Okay, this is the story of Pai Mei and his meeting with a Shaolin monk. All right, a long time ago, probably about 1,000 years ago, Pai Mei, the head priest of the notorious White Lotus clan, with which I'm sure you'll all be familiar, was walking along the road contemplating whatever a man of Pai Mei's infinite power and wisdom would contemplate, which is another way of saying who knows. Now, walking in the opposite direction appeared a Shaolin monk. And when Pai Mei and the Shaolin monk crossed paths, Pai Mei, in a practically unfathomable display of generosity, offered the Shaolin monk the slightest of nods. The nod was not returned. Now, was it Pai Mei's intention to, I made a mistake. Now, was it the Shaolin monk's intention to insult Pai Mei? Or did he just fail to see this social generous gesture? Now, to this day, we don't know the answer to that question. But what we do know, however, are the consequences. Do you know where this is going, Carolyn?
No, please tell me.
Well, Pai Mei had anger management issues. The next day, he turned up at the Shaolin temple and demanded that the head abbot offer Pai Mei the same Shaolin monk's neck in order to repay the insult. Now, at first, the abbot tried to console Pai Mei, only to find that Pai Mei was inconsolable. And thus began the fall of the Shaolin temple and the massacre of all 60 monks inside at the fists of the White Lotus. And also began the legend of Pai Mei's 5-point palm exploding heart technique. Now you've got to say, Carolyn, and what, pray tell, is the 5-point palm exploding heart technique?
What, pray tell, is that?
Nope, you're going to say, oh, what, pray tell, is the 5-point palm exploding heart
exploding technique?
Quite simply, the most deadly move in the whole of martial arts, and only Pai Mei knows it. He'll touch you at 5 different pressure points in your body, and you'll feel all right. But you take 5 steps after that, and your heart will explode inside your body, and you fall to the ground dead. Do you know where? Right, I want to ask you, where did I get this story? I'm sure one of you knows it.
Don't know this at all. You have me hooked.
This story comes from a film.
I should know this.
And not necessarily. Not necessarily. Let me just make sure this is not a test. Make sure you know this. This is David Carradine and Uma Thurman sitting together
Oh,
sitting
yes,
together at a
of course.
campfire,
It's
David
so good.
Carradine telling Uma Thurman the story of Pai Mei, interspersed with blows of his cane flute.
Mhm, mhm.
And he tells the story to Uma Thurman with a very specific purpose. And the purpose in the story is to warn Uma Thurman, to give her a demonstration of what sort of man Pai Mei is. Because despite the fact that Pai Mei is over 1,000 years old, he's still alive and well. And Uma Thurman, the next day, the kid, or kiddo as she's called in the film, is going to start her training with Pai Mei. Do you remember this? And
Mhm.
so we need some kind of illustration. We need to know what kind of man is Pai Mei. And we all know the importance of show, don't tell. And this is exactly what a story can be. This is exactly what a story can do. So in the context of this film, the story has a very, very specific purpose.
Mhm.
Quentin Tarantino is telling us, it looks like David Carradine, Bill, is telling Uma Thurman, but really Quentin Tarantino is telling us who Pai Mei is and what he is capable of. To kind of, this is a good way of marking it so we know what's coming next. And we know that Uma Thurman, kiddos, should not mess with Pai Mei. And neither should you, by the way, if any of you ever meet him. And if you go to his restaurant, leave a tip.
A big one. Well, and Tarantino is a master storyteller, and he tells, his characters tell a lot of stories in his work. Like that's a big, Sorkin does that too, where they tell the story of something. And it's so funny because I've seen that film years ago, totally forgot about it, and now listening to you tell it, it's like I got a whole new life to it when you tell it. So which is also interesting too. I mean, you can hear the same story from different people and it won't have the same ring to it. And he's doing it at the flute and the ominous thing.
Yeah.
Thing. Yeah.
And this is something I train my trainees to do on the course. And my personal favorite is Tarantino, because so many great films have monologues or stories. And what I train them to do is to find one that you like, find a monologue that you like, and just copy it verbatim, which is more or less what I did. Yeah. That was originally, it was a monologue, a story told by David Carradine in Kill Bill, and I used to have it word perfect, but over the years I've kind of changed a few pieces, forgotten a few pieces, added a few of my own, but I'm very happy. I've always loved telling that story, and I've always loved David Carradine. Is it David? I've got his surname right. Carradine.
That's right.
Yeah, I've always loved his performance and that story. But one of the other ones is I mean, we're talking about preparing a story. You can't find a greater example of that than in Reservoir Dogs, when the character played by Tim Roth is coached. That's a story with a purpose, an incredibly identifiable purpose. It's a story that he's going to tell in order to demonstrate that he's one of the members of his new pack. When I say the new pack, I mean this band of criminals, of hardened bank criminals, bank robbers that he's infiltrating, and he's got to tell this story to demonstrate that he is one of them. And so this is where your life depends on good storytelling, and there's no one like Quentin Tarantino to draw our attention to that, I think, is there?
Absolutely. And he kind of does the flip side of that when he has, the whole Whopper Mac, quarter pounder with cheese, all of that stuff with the two criminals in Pulp Fiction. They're telling regular guy stories to let us see them as not just, thugs and killers, that we see that, they'll talk about bacon and pigs and stuff just because that's the story that they're telling with each other and laughing about and whatever, because that humanizes them and makes them like
absolutely
people. Yeah.
And isn't that another great illustration, Carolyn, of making the unremarkable meaningful?
Absolutely.
They're so memorable, those scenes, the dialogue, the foot massage dialogue.
Yeah. Really good one. Great example. Yeah.
Totally unremarkable, completely memorable and meaningful.
Totally. And it means it's his life. Like, it's a life and death. And that's Tarantino. He operates on that life and death level. But it can be, Whiplash is a great example of a film that's not life and death, but has that same, he tells all kinds. Fletcher has that great scene where he talks about the two words, good job, being the most harmful things you can say to someone, and he tells a long story about why he believes that. And so those kinds of storytelling, the stakes are so high in that film, but nobody's dying. It's not about it's the death of art and passion and creativity and all of that. So it doesn't have to be, you know, because we talk about Tarantino, I always want to like throw in there that it doesn't mean your screenplay has to be about killing for it to be that high stake. It could just be loss of love. This can be the same heart-wrenching thing. So it's so lovely. I could talk to you all day. I just love like the examples that you give. So I'm going to share Jamie's if you want to know more and see his course. Also, definitely, hang on, let me get the right link here. And then I'm going to put it on the screen. And if someone could put it in the chat, that would be swell because I can't do that. But definitely follow Jamie on Instagram because he tells some stories on there. And so you can just, you know, binge watch Jamie Keddie.
I'll start doing more. People keep telling me I've got to put more stories on Instagram, and I really do. So I'll start doing more.
So, and then you have to tell the hammerhead shark story.
Oh,
that's a good one for us to close on.
Okay.
So I really feel that storytelling can change the world, and that's why we're here as screen readers. And for those of you that write, you are a writer. If you're a reader, you're also a writer. I say that all the time. And that's your secret weapon. Use your ability to storytell as a way to survive your life and make yourself more content and develop your relationships and have more fun. And like life should be fun, and storytelling, as we've is clearly demonstrated here, can be really fun and lovely, and we should do more of it for sure. So tell the hammerhead story.
Well, the hammerhead shark story. This is a term that I use on my course in the unit on story design, and story design encompasses a lot of different design elements, but what is design? Well, design is thinking about your listener, thinking about your audience. And I think there's 6 design aspects that I mention. And one of those is be aware of hammerhead shark stories. And I get this, I've stolen this from one of my favorite comedy shows. You may be familiar with it. It's called Blackadder.
I am now.
You are now.
Yeah.
So Blackadder is a BBC comedy show, and there's only 4 series, but it goes back years, and it's Rowan Atkinson is the main character, and if you don't know who Rowan Atkinson is, he's Mr. Bean, and it's the premise of Blackadder is in each different series they have a historical situation, and the second series takes place during Elizabethan England, so Elizabeth I, and there's what's happened in this one episode, which is called Potato, is that Sir Walter Raleigh has come back from his first voyage. Sir Walter Raleigh that brought to Europe tobacco and potatoes, among other things, you see. And he starts to hang around in the royal court and becomes good friends with Queen Elizabeth I. But after a few weeks, you see, he's just been sharing far too many stories of his adventures with Queen Elizabeth I. And she's starting to get a bit tired of him. And he says to her, he says, perhaps, Mom, I could amuse you with another one of my stories of my heroic adventures. And she says, reluctantly, because I guess she's feeling bored, well, all right then. And he says, did I tell you the one about the mad pirate king with a crew of men named only Roger? And the Queen goes, yes, I've heard that one. He says, well, perhaps, Mom, I could distract you with the story of the time I fell into the water and was almost eaten by a hammerhead shark. And the Queen is kind of suspicious, but she's not heard this one. She goes, all right, then, let's hear that one. So Sir Walter Raleigh adopts his heroic position and says, well, Ma'am, I fell into the water and was almost eaten by a hammerhead shark. And that's the end of the story, you see. Now, it might sound a bit silly, and it probably does. But the point is that, and I'm not going to say this. This is actually what I wouldn't say this if she was here, but this is what my girlfriend does all the time. She tells hammerhead shark stories. She'll come home and she'll tell a story which could have been a really, really good story, but she'll give me the essence of the story. We could call it the punchline, although I don't really like using the term punchline for storytelling, but you know what I mean by that. She provides that, she drops the essence of the story into the very first line. I was almost eaten by a hammerhead shark. And then she has to give us the background information, the where, the when, the what, the why, the who. And it's too late. I've already had the story experience, and she's kind of swimming upstream to try and chase the story, but she's already lost. And I, as her audience, I'm listening because I have to. Of course, you understand. Yes, but I'm thinking hammerhead shark story, hammerhead shark story. So avoid hammerhead shark stories.
Have you told her the hammerhead shark story?
I have, but I didn't tell her it relates to her. I just thought she might, the penny might drop, but it hasn't. So I think I maybe will. I'll maybe let her see Blackadder and say, see that? That's you, that is.
But listen nonetheless, no matter what, whatever order it's in, you need to listen. So good. It's so delightful to have you. I could have you all day. This is so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for everybody that's taking the time to be here. Everybody seems to be Facebook users, and there's a few names.
Yeah. So you guys, if you don't click on StreamYard, this is what you look like. You have to click on StreamYard.com. And then give them permission to use your name. So there's Shree. Shree knows. So
I've just seen there's a question I didn't answer, and Sherry asked, "Is Google Keep? Is it the app?" And it absolutely is. It's the app. And just before, I'm happy if anyone's got any more questions, Carolyn. But you've got to. I know you've got to wrap up.
Oh no, we're good. We're good. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to put it in there. And then, so tell us a little bit about your course. How does it work?
Well, it's a course that's aimed at teachers, but anyone's welcome to join if you'd like to pop in. I share one short video every week with a handout and a task, and there's an online forum for people to share their ideas, share their stories, give feedback, report back on tasks and discussions. But maybe I'd like to do a more general one day for not just teachers, let's say.
I think for storytellers in general, it's a great way to watch people develop their stories, and you can, throw your own in there and develop the story that way. And I think just becoming a good storyteller is also important. Once you start to pitch your, screenplay, being able to tell the story of your screenplay, log lines, all of that, that's thanks Facebook user for putting the thing in the chat.
Oh, thank you for that.
Why aren't you showing it? Once you're pitching your story and being able to condense it down, and as a reader, we have to take a 90 to 120 page screenplay and condense that down into 2 to 5 pages. So being able to not just give the punchline, and being able to show what leads to things, and also just that whole, setup, and being able to foreshadow and show, set things up so they make sense later, like the ice example that Jamie gave. And I talk about this all the time. I see it in the screen. I call it screenplay stew, where someone's taking all of their different ideas and trying to throw them in one screenplay, and then it just becomes a big conglomerate mess of, it's a horror film that has an alien in it that would be cool if it was in the 17th century, and it's like too many stories in one. So being able to use the app, suss out your ideas, do it that way, learning how to structure a story so you're not squirreling off. That's the squirrel syndrome. I've named everything. The squirrel syndrome, so you're not in the middle of your story and then running off. So what does a lesson stream mean?
A lesson stream is the name of my platform, my website, my community.
Your screen readers, like we use Thinkific. He uses lesson stream, but it's a way that he delivers his.
I really get very passionate about this. If anyone wants to chat or ask me questions, Caroline mentioned that Instagram's the way in. So there's Jamie Keddie. I don't know if you can see that. You sort of almost can, can't you?
So it's, and your name just went away on the things on the screen for some reason. So it's Jamie Keddie, Keddie, correct?
That's right.
And, and you can just follow him on Instagram, and then he's got the link to his thing there as well. But so definitely do that.
The lesson stream member is, well, you become a member and then you get access to the story course. Again, this is specifically for teachers, but there are a few non-teachers as well. But yeah, you get access to lesson plans, this course, and the community. Yes.
Story. Now we're getting some good. I have a mammoth story. What's?
Oh, great.
Book. Oh my. So mapping that out. So I'll let you answer, and then because it's different for screenplay.
Well, this is very different to what I do. I've always secretly had a little ambition to one day write a screenplay, but I would be starting from scratch. So bear in mind that this is nothing. I know nothing at all about screenplay writing, really. But for what's the best way to get the heart of the story, something Carolyn mentioned is when things can become slightly convoluted, to just ask yourself, what is this story about, and know what the answer to that is. Being able to give a summary of your story as concisely as you possibly can. And this is an activity, it's a very standard activity. It's one that I've borrowed and one that I do. And it's something I would think you've got to be able to know what your story is about. And you know, you can have the one-liner, you can have maybe a one-paragrapher, a one-pager, but it's all about you being aware of it. And also I think people can be scared. This is another thing I see, the too much information effect. If people are basing stories on true events, they feel there's almost an obligation to be true to the actual events that happened, and they think they've got to include everything. And strangely, in order to find the truth, you sometimes have to lie, in the sense that sometimes you have to omit facts, change the things the way actually did happen, because if you don't, you're going to create distractors from your audience. So if you've got a mammoth story, I would maybe start by giving it a shave and making it into an elephant, and then maybe reducing it from there a bit. Look for ways to refine it, streamline it, and make it a little bit simpler and more tangible.
And could it be more than one story? Is that possible? We have a course finished to show you how to write a screenplay. So I'll have to let you into that, Jamie. You can check it out. Sure. So, but we have what we call a screenplay tracker. And so it's a place for you to put your ideas so that you're not putting all of your things into one story, and that way, and it has different tabs for different stories. So that way you can be like, oh, I think I'll take this character and put him over here. So you're not conglomerating everything into one story. And that really helps if you kind of map it out, for sure. Having that, it doesn't have to all be together in one thing, and kind of paring it down is really definitely a way to go. And just telling it to other people and seeing where they perk up and seeing where they, you know, it's really easy if they start coughing or go looking on their phone, then you know that that particular part isn't as compelling as the other part. And so you can just kind of keep working on it in that way too. Yeah, well, every story can have, you know, all kinds of different perspectives and things that happen. So you have to choose the ones, you choose what is the message you're trying to get across, and start from there.
Yeah, it's another way of saying, what is the story about? Another way to say the same thing is, what does it mean? What does it mean to you? Why are you telling it? And sometimes you find somebody telling you a story, and that is your question. Why is this person telling me this story? The chances are that person won't actually know. And I think the more you know why you're telling the story, the greater the chance that your audience will take something away from it. That's not to say that they're going to take away what you want them to take away or what it means to you, but it's going to mean that your story is better put together, told better. And the more you know why you're telling it, the more your audience is likely to take away from it, I would say.
Being able to pick out the things that people can relate to. So the movie The Rookie, which was Dennis Quaid, and he comes back as a retired, he's like in his 40s, and he comes back and he's a professional baseball player. Total true story. And it is very accurately true, the movie is. And they said they actually had to take things out of the movie because no one would believe them, even though they were true. And I do find that often, and we say this as writers, all of my writer friends say this all the time, it's true, no one will believe it. So people won't, truth is stranger than fiction often. And so they actually took out, and even then he's like in the rain, and we're like, oh, come on. And no, that was real. It was in the rain, and he was throwing a baseball past a speed radar. And that's how, and he was angry and he threw a baseball and then noticed that the radar thing said it was 99 or something. And he was like, what? And then, realized, oh, my arm's back, So it's like, so inspiring, and it's so movie-ish that they almost took the rain out because it was so cheesy in a way, but that's actually what happened. So you have to be able to kind of, suss it out a little bit.
Yes.
Wow.
There's some questions there, very interesting questions, but I think probably you're much more qualified to answer them than me, Carolyn, about the shape of an 8-decade story, which would be an interesting question.
Finished is we do have a course on how to write a screenplay. We don't talk about it all that much. We're going to launch it big in January, but you can definitely join Finished. It's a course on how to write a screenplay. And we can put the link in there for you. And that's how you can learn how to do that. So it doesn't really matter, if you're telling a story of a life over 2 decades or 8 decades, it's the same concept in terms of what Jamie's been saying this whole time is like figuring out the things, what moves the story forward in your heart, and what moves the story forward in the message that you're trying to tell. You could tell 80 decades that is fantastic and amazing, and you could tell 80 decades that is like snoozing. So it's about picking the things that lead you to the outcome that you desire, knowing where you're headed. And we had Paul Haggis come in, who wrote, he's only writer to win back-to-back Oscars. And he talked about often how the end of a series or the end of an act will fall apart. The end of the movie will fall apart because people don't know where they're going. He finds that in adaptations, mostly in books, but he talked about that a lot, about knowing where you're going for sure. And the 3-act structure, I think if you're in our screen reader program too, we cover this as well. The 3-act structure of how to write a screenplay we cover that because as a reader, you need to know that as well. So if you come into the screen reader program, we definitely cover all of that. And yeah, I don't know who this is, Facebook user. If you can it's so weird that usually we don't have this many Facebook users. I usually see names more, I think I can tell you're super creative, whoever you are. So you're super creative. And I think sometimes us creative folks get so creative that we almost trip ourselves up with our own creativity. And now you're down a whole path of worrying about should it be a tree or a skeleton or whatever. It can be whatever. It doesn't matter. Whatever works for you, just condense it down into whatever as simple as possible. And I've actually had people say to us, oh, I have so many ideas. I get overwhelmed. I'm not going to do any of them. And what a tragedy that is. We want to make sure that, pick one and then just keep working on it, share it in the Facebook group with each other. And, you can start working your way through it. I think, and then let's see what else we got. There, we got the Crash. Oh, I started to say he wrote and I didn't finish that. Crash and $1 Million Baby is what he won the Oscars for. StreamYard is good to know. Okay, thanks. So I will let StreamYard know about that. Yeah, I know it's different people. I can tell by your voices. I can tell this is a good dialogue exercise, by the way, because I can tell that they're different people because of the way the sentences are written. And that's an exercise in a screenplay for you writers out there. Just take your characters' names off and make sure that you can still tell who everybody is without their name. And that's the way that you test your dialogue in a screenplay. So we're giving a live example how to do that. So yeah, so thank you again, Jamie, for coming in. And this is so fun having you here and talking.
Thank you very much. And thanks for everybody that's here today.
Yeah, so good to have you. And we'd love to have you back. And so those of you that are in our screen reader program, Jamie's going to come in and we're going to talk a little bit more about how he teaches and what he does. For all of you that are in our screen reader program, once you learn how to become a reader, there's so many things that you can do with it. And what Jamie does with the way that he teaches story, I think is so inspiring. And I'm hoping that it also inspires all of our screen readers to figure out other ways that they can help as being a reader. So really, really, really fun. And if you don't know what a reader is and you want to learn more, you can come to our masterclass, which is at hollywoodgatekeepers.com/free masterclass. And in that masterclass, it's totally free. And we give you a screen reader template, how to write a coverage, and we give you a screenplay, and we do all kinds of things so that when you leave there, you know what a reader is, you know the drill, and then you can make a decision whether you want to come into one of our programs or whether you want to just learn on your own or what you want to do. But the masterclass really lays it out. So I highly recommend that you come to the masterclass if you don't know what being a reader is and you want to check that out. And then definitely follow Jamie on Instagram, and definitely make sure that you check out his membership, because I think it's a spectacular deal, and you'll learn so much about storytelling. And I'm just thrilled. So happy that I met you.
Me too. Likewise.
Yes,
absolutely. And I hope, thank you so much again.
Yeah.
To everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, you guys. And we will see you soon. I'll see you back when I'm in SoCal. Totally. All right, you guys have a beautiful day. And thank you so much, Jamie.
Thank you.
Cool. Bye.
Bye-bye.